Hey, welcome back, friends. Today I'm going to share a little bit on the subject of the indwelling anointing. Every one of us has been given an indwelling anointing inside of us that dwells within us, and this is going to come from John the Apostle's letter, 1 John verse 2:27. I'm going to read from there, and so it says. In verse 27, 1 John 2:27, as for you, the anointing you received from him remains in you, and you do not need anyone to teach you, but as his anointing teaches you about all things, and as that anointing is real, not counterfeit, just as it has taught you, remain in him. Again, as for you, the anointing you received from him remains in you. That's an awesome reality, is that the anointing that we actually received from him, it actually remains in us. It remains in us. It's really key to recognize and remember that that anointing is an abiding anointing, and it remains in you, and you do not need anyone to teach you, but as his anointing teaches you about all things, it's another thing to recognize about the indwelling, abiding anointing within you. It teaches us all things. Even if we never sat under a teacher, we can still learn from the anointing, because the anointing teaches us, and it actually can teach us. It teaches us all things. It teaches us the ways of God. It teaches us about God. It reveals and makes known to us God. And it says that you do not need anyone to teach you. It doesn't mean that I believe that John was writing that it doesn't mean that I don't need anybody to teach me, that there's nothing anybody else has gone through life in God, in the Spirit, that has learned something that I don't need that I can't receive from. Actually, when people teach by the anointing, we actually are receiving from the anointing, and we're being taught from the anointing. We can be taught from the anointing within another person. It teaches us within ourselves, but it also teaches us in others, and what others have gone through, and what the Spirit has brought them through and taught them. It can be imparted to us, understanding in the ways of God. So his anointing, it teaches us all things. That's an incredible truth right there, that all things, all things. He teaches us the deep things of God. He teaches us the ways of God. He teaches us how to walk in him, to live in him, to move in him. There's all kinds of things. The Spirit, it says that the Spirit, in 1 Corinthians, it says that the Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God. And as that anointing is real, not counterfeit, just as it has taught you, remain in him. Now that's one of the most central goals or central purpose of the anointing is to teach us to abide in the Lord. It teaches us to abide in him. That's how you can recognize, one of the ways you can recognize the anointing moving in a person's life and teaching a person, is that it always draws the person into a place of abiding in Jesus, into a place of intimacy with God. The anointing is, like I heard many years ago from a prophet, that the anointing is about a relationship. It's all about relationship. The anointing is a relationship. It's all about bringing us into a abiding union with Jesus, the vine. It draws us into that place. It draws us into a place of dependency, into a place of reliance, into a place of faith in the Lord, a place of living in the Spirit, a place of living in and abiding in and resting in the true vine, who is Jesus himself. So, the anointing will teach us, and and all of it, all of the outcome of its the teaching of the anointing, of the guidance of the anointing will ultimately lead us into a place of resting in the Lord, of abiding in Him. If they don't, if they teach you, if you're receiving from some person and it does not point you towards Jesus or lead you to a place of abiding in Jesus, of a place of resting in Jesus, then it's not going to be the true anointing. And there is, like he said, just as it is true and not counterfeit, just as it is true and not counterfeit, and the anointing is real and not counterfeit, just as it has taught you, remain in Him. And as that anointing is real, is true, and as that anointing is real, is true, and not counterfeit, just as it has taught you, abide and remain in Him. See, the counterfeit anointing, the spirit that teaches, that is teaching through a person, that is flowing through a person, that is not the true anointing, or is a counterfeit anointing, will not direct you and lead you into a place of abiding and intimacy and union with the Lord, with the true vine. That's where you can recognize, again, that's how you can discern that it's a counterfeit anointing. John says that they are from the world and therefore speak from the viewpoint of the world, and the world listens to them. He says the world listens to them because they are from the world and they speak from the viewpoint of the world, and the world listens to them. But you are from God, children, and whoever you are from God, and whoever knows God, you recognize it. And whoever is from God and knows God and speaks from God, you'll recognize it. Again, he says they are from the world and therefore speak from the viewpoint of the world, and the world listens to them. But we are from God, and whoever knows God listens to us. Why do they listen to us? Why would they listen to you when you're abiding in that anointing, when you're being taught by the true anointing, not the counterfeit? Why do they listen to you? Because they themselves have learned to listen to the anointing. They have themselves have been taught by the anointing. They have themselves are dwelling, abiding, and remaining in the vine. They are themselves are in that place of intimacy with Jesus and walking in the Spirit with the Lord. Therefore, they can recognize the same anointing. They recognize the Spirit, the fingerprint of the anointing, the fingerprint of the Spirit of truth. They recognize it because they've seen it, they've touched it, they felt it, they've known it, they've walked in that place. So, this is an encouraging word that John tells us, because in John's times, when he wrote these things, he had to deal with all kinds of false doctrine, all kinds of spirits that were not of God, those that have gone out from amongst you, false anointings, false Christ. The word Christ represents anointing, and the anointed one and his anointing, or the anointing, it's a false Christ, a false anointing. That's where we get an understanding of the counterfeit anointing, or the false Christ. It's a false anointing. It's a spirit of deception. It's a deceiving spirit. It doesn't lead you in the truth, but leads you into deception. And Jesus will lead us. He says that His Spirit will lead us and guide us into all truth. And you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And you'll become even more reliant and dependent and hungry and in love with Jesus. So I just want to encourage you to just recognize continue to recognize the fact that God's anointing is at work in you. God's anointing is dwelling in you. It's abiding in you. You have the true anointing in you that teaches you all things. You have inside you, we have inside of us, the one who can teach us about all things. Yes, there's many people that have revelation and true revelation and understanding and experiences and can teach from those things, but the same Spirit that dwells in them is the same Spirit that dwells in you. The same anointing that teaches them is the same anointing that teaches carries you and can teach you and bring you into incredible things, just as they walk in incredible things. There's nothing special about another person. They didn't get a half portion of the anointing that abides within, and you they didn't get a full portion of the anointing that abides in them, and you only have the half of anointing that abides in you. No, we've all been given the anointing, and it dwells within us, and it's all about a relationship. It's all about connecting with Jesus. May God bless you and encourage you as you pursue him, and you draw near to him as he draws near to you, and he teaches you by his anointing. May God bless you and increase you, and may you grow in the knowledge of God. God bless you. Thank you.